Hello everyone! Except for the front fenders, another problematic area in old Audi A6 cars is the bottoms of the doors. The right passenger door in my car was repaired 6 years ago, and back then no one treated it with anything, so over the years there's almost nothing left of the lower part of the door. As you can see, the rust primarily affects the lower edge of the door and the holes for the attaching the molding. That's why these areas need more attention during the car's operation. When I disassembled the door a bit, I realized that there's nothing to restore there, and it would be logical to look for a better option at car scrapyards. I was lucky and managed to find a good door option without holes and visible signs of deep corrosion. I started by sanding the entire door since I'll have to repaint it anyway, and this will also expose all the areas with corrosion spots. It turned out there was a problem area under the molding, so I had to peel it off, and it would also make rust removal easier. There are rust in the lower part of the door, but isn't completely through, and there are traces of acid primer inside, indicating that this door had been treated before. Inside, there was rust in the places where the lower and upper moldings were attached. Rust was only on one side of the fold, and overall, the edge and the factory sealant were in decent condition for so many years. Next, I assembled a small sandblasting apparatus and decided to try using it to remove rust. However, I wasn't satisfied with the sandblasting setup as it consumed a lot of air and removed rust very slowly. So I took a coral disc and used it to initially sand the bottom of the door. The goal was to leave as little rust as possible. After sanding the door with the coral disc, I tried to remove as much remaining rust as possible from the recesses using a DIY sandblasting apparatus. It worked fairly well, but it's important to understand that it won't be possible to remove all the corrosion. So the main goal is to slow down its spread by sealing off air and moisture. However, I wasn't able to sandblast the inside of the door, so there I mostly had to remove rust using sandpaper. In the next step, I applied a rust converter to all the cleaned areas and allowed it to dry for a couple of hours. When the converter dries, it turns black, and the good thing is that it doesn't need to be washed off with water. Then, I again used sandpaper and an orbital machine to sand the door from both the outside and the inside to further remove remaining rust. The next step is applying an acid primer to the metal. I applied acid primer with a paint gun where I could access, and in hard-to-reach areas I used a brush. An essential point is that I didn't cover the inside of the door with primer because I will treat that area with gun grease, a special lubricant for metal preservation, later. Acid primer is then covered with acrylic primer. Since I am repainting the whole door, I applied primer to its interior surface. To prevent acrylic primer from reaching the lower parts of the door from the inside, I covered the openings with painter's tape and protected the door frame from paint and lacquer. After painting the door, I removed the painter's tape and applied a rust converter to the inside of the door once again. Next, the door was installed on the car, and to protect its inside, I melted gun grease using a construction heat gun. While the conservation grease was still hot, I applied it to the bottom of the door with a brush. I didn't apply a thick layer to avoid clogging the drainage holes. After applying the grease to ensure an even spread, I used the construction heat gun again to slightly warm it. As a result, I achieved a uniform layer that will serve as a protective barrier, preventing air and moisture from reaching the metal. The effectiveness of this treatment on the door bottoms will only be evident over time, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next videos.